I've never been fond of mirrors. Not because of the usual worries, wrinkles, flaws, signs of age, but because they reflect truths I try to pretend aren't there. In the reflection, I see the emptiness behind my eyes after waking beside a man who hasn't truly looked at me in years. I see the forced smile, dulled by resignation. My husband, Mark, isn't unkind or dishonest, he's just absent. Physically there, emotionally gone. His possessiveness doesn't stem from love or longing, but from a need to control. He never compliments me, never reaches for me with warmth. Yet when another man so much as glances my way, he tenses like I belong to him. Though I'm 35, I often feel a lifetime older. As if silence and monotony are slowly draining the color from me. Routine days, quiet nights, side by side in a bed divided by invisible walls. So when my phone vibrated and my sister's name appeared, I expected nothing more than small talk. "Hey," I answered, keeping my tone neutral. I didn't want her to hear the emptiness I'd grown used to. "Sophie," she greeted warmly, her voice a familiar comfort. "We're doing a little something for Daniel's birthday next week. He's turning 20. Just a few close people, nothing big. I'd really love it if you could come." Daniel, my nephew, her only child. It had been nearly a year since I'd last seen him, back at Christmas, when he still had the lanky awkwardness of someone not yet grown into himself. He had always been thoughtful, gentle, quietly helping in the kitchen, always more of an observer than a talker. "That sounds lovely," I said, my voice gentler now. "You're sure it's okay I come?" "Of course," she laughed. "You're his favorite aunt. He's been asking about you." That gave me pause. I asked, trying to hide the flutter of something I didn't expect to feel.
"Yes."
"He's changed a lot. College has shaped him in all the right ways. He's more sure of himself now, more grounded." I hesitated, then nodded to myself.
"All right.
I'll be there." The day of the party, I stood before my closet far longer than I should have. I didn't like the nervous energy in me, like I was preparing for something I didn't fully understand. I picked out a soft blue dress that clung just enough to remind me I still existed. I kept my makeup minimal but gave myself some color. I wanted to feel visible again, even if only to myself. When I arrived, the house was full of life and laughter. I saw Daniel before he noticed me, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. He wasn't the boy I remembered. He stood in the kitchen, beer in hand, relaxed and laughing. His frame was stronger, his movements more assured. But what struck me most was how he moved through the room, calm, present, with an ease that wasn't there before. Then he spotted me. His face broke into a bright smile. "Aunt Sophie," he called, weaving through the guests until he stood in front of me. I smiled back, surprised by the wave of emotion. "Hi, birthday guy." He hugged me, and something in me tensed. Not because of discomfort, but because his hand pressed lightly against the small of my back, his chest firm against mine, and the hug lingered, just a second longer than it should have. "You look amazing," he said, his voice deeper now, confident. My heart skipped. "Thank you," I said, my voice catching. "And you've grown so much." He laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Been working out a bit." "I can tell," I replied before I could stop myself. He smiled, eyes gleaming. "Hungry? There's food out back. I saved you a spot." The night went on, but from that point, something between us had shifted. He stayed close, introducing me to his friends, keeping my drink topped off, asking about my job, my writing, things Mark hadn't asked in years. Every glance between us felt charged. Not with what was said, but with everything left unspoken. And as the night slowed down, as the crowd thinned and the lights dimmed, he remained by my side. When my sister excused herself for the night, he turned to me. "Want to step out for some air?" he asked softly. I nodded, not trusting my voice to work. We sat on the back porch, the spring air soft around us, like a shared secret. The moonlight sketched his features in silver, and I found myself looking, really looking, and realizing how much time had passed. Not just in years, but in distance. I remembered the boy who used to sketch superheroes and help his friends feel welcome. That quiet goodness had grown with him. "You all right?" he asked gently. I looked away.
Yeah.
Just thinking. "Still rough between you and Uncle Mark?" I nodded, surprised by his directness. He leaned in a little, voice low. "You deserve more than that, Sophie." I turned to face him, caught by how steady his gaze was, how sure. "I'm not a kid anymore," he said, almost like a passing thought. "I notice things now, understand them in a new way." I hesitated, unsure of what to say. The quiet between us wasn't awkward, but it brimmed with something unspoken. Without saying more, Daniel leaned in and wrapped his arms around me. The hug wasn't what startled me, it was the feeling behind it. It didn't carry the quick affection of a nephew saying hello. It was steady, intentional, like he could see straight through me, past the carefully curated smile and polite laughter. I melted into him, letting my cheek rest on his shoulder, feeling seen for the first time in longer than I dared to admit. "I know you're not fine," he murmured near my ear. My eyes fell shut. "I don't need to know every detail," he added quietly, "but I notice how different you look when he's around. Like you're vanishing." I had no words. None I could speak anyway. My throat tightened under the weight of everything I'd never said aloud. Then, softly, he said, "Come here."
I want to show you something.
He led me around the house, toward the garage. With a calm sort of ease, he opened the door and flipped the light switch. What I saw inside made me freeze. A motorcycle. Not just any old machine, but a stunner. Jet black, silver-edged, with a build that hinted at craftsmanship and time. It gleamed under the overhead bulb like it belonged in a showroom, or a dream. "You built this?" I asked, my voice low. Daniel nodded, grinning. "Every piece. Took me a couple of years, started while I was still in school. Just finished the frame a few weeks ago." I circled it slowly, brushing my fingers across the polished surface. "It's incredible." He tilted his head, a glint of mischief in his eyes. "Want to go for a ride?" I blinked. "Right now?"
Sure.
"The roads are quiet. I've got a spare helmet." I hesitated, glancing back toward the warm light inside the house. That familiar space. The one filled with routine, with waiting, with quiet. Then I turned back to him. And, without understanding why, I nodded. He handed me a helmet and helped fasten it. His fingertips grazed my cheek as he adjusted the strap, and something fluttered beneath my skin, an involuntary response I didn't expect. I climbed onto the back, the seat still warm from the garage. When the engine started, a thrill ran through me. I wrapped my arms around his waist and held on. And just like that, we were off. The night air rushed past, cool against my face and tugging at my clothes. My hair whipped loose from its clip as we flew beneath the moonlight, the trees blurring along the sides of the road. The steady hum of the motor vibrated through me, and I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in what felt like forever. I pressed closer, not thinking of what it meant. For a while, I wasn't worried about expectations or judgment. For those few minutes, I felt free. We eventually turned off the road, gliding into a quiet overlook above the lake. The engine eased into a soft rumble before Daniel cut it off completely. The silence was rich, the moonlight dancing across the water. I removed my helmet, still catching my breath, and turned to him. "How do you feel?" he asked. I met his eyes. Like I remembered something I'd forgotten. His mouth lifted in a small smile. "Good." My voice lowered. "You made everything else disappear tonight." "That was the plan," he said quietly. "You deserved that." As I exhaled, something loosened inside me. The feeling was subtle, but unmistakable. Like something had turned inside out, slowly and quietly. Instead of fear, I felt something else. Like I was awakening. The stillness around us was sharp now, filled with the space between words left unsaid. Daniel shifted toward me slightly, his hand resting lightly on the seat. His eyes caught the moon's reflection, and they didn't waver. It was in that space between us, a breath, a heartbeat, a hesitation, that I felt the shift. It wasn't sudden but steady, a gravity, gently pulling us forward. He moved closer, not bold, not rushed. like he was asking something without speaking. And I didn't move away. My heart stammered, but I didn't stop him. All I could feel was the moment unfolding around us. My gaze dropped to his lips. The air crackled. Time stretched. His forehead nearly brushed mine. The space between us thinned to nothing. And then my phone rang. The ring pierced the moment, a shrill vibration cutting clean through the hush like shattered glass. I drew a sharp breath as the spell broke. My hands fumbled for the phone, clumsy with sudden urgency. One glance at the screen, and my heart dropped.
Mark.
I stared at his name, my thumb frozen above the accept button. Daniel shifted slightly, his gaze turning toward the water, his jaw set tight. I answered. "Hello," I said, my voice uneven, still catching up to reality. "Where are you?" Mark's voice snapped through the line. No warmth, no concern. Just clipped syllables wrapped in expectation. "It's late. You said you'd be home by now." My eyes flicked to Daniel. "I'm still at the party. Lost track of time." A pause. "You didn't message me," he replied, his tone flat. "I didn't," I admitted quietly. Another beat of silence. "So? Are you coming back?" "No, how are you?" "No, did you enjoy yourself?" Just the old tone, subtle possession cloaked as routine. "I'll head home soon," I murmured. He ended the call without a goodbye. I stared at the phone for a while, then let it fall into my lap. Daniel hadn't moved. His fingers tapped lightly on his leg, his eyes on the lake. "I should take you back," he said, the words soft and measured. "Daniel." "It's fine," he interrupted gently, eyes still averted. I stepped over. "I thought maybe you—" "I did." The words tumbled out of me, quiet but undeniable. That made him turn, his face unreadable. The tension between us sat like fog, thick and unmoving. "But it's not simple," I said, my voice cracking. He nodded once slowly. "I know." The silence held for a long moment, but it wasn't awkward. It was a space full of everything we hadn't said. Then, without another word, he started the engine. We rode back through the night, the wind sharper now. I held onto him like before, but my thoughts weren't floating. They were loud.
Charged.
A current of everything I thought I'd buried deep. And one truth pulsed louder than the rest. Something between us had shifted. There was no returning to how it was. The engine thrummed, the wind roared, but now the silence between us didn't feel heavy. It was something different. Shared. Intimate in a new way. Halfway down a quiet stretch of road, Daniel glanced back over his shoulder and called out, "Let's scream." I blinked. "What?" "Let it out. Like we're kids again," he yelled over the wind. And then, without waiting, he threw his head back and howled into the air like he was calling down the moon. I laughed, caught completely off guard, and before I knew it, I joined him. Head back, mouth open, shouting into the night like it could hear me. It was wild.
Silly.
Freeing. We screamed again, our voices carried off into the dark like confessions. Then we both broke into laughter, full and unfiltered. It felt absurd. It felt necessary. I gripped him tighter. And in that space, I knew I wasn't ready to return. Not to the silence. Not to the half-life I'd been enduring. When we rolled into the driveway, only the porch light still glowed. Most guests had gone. The street was quiet. But I didn't move. Daniel shut off the engine, and the night fell back into its natural rhythm. "Do you want to come inside?" he asked softly, still not meeting my eyes. I didn't answer right away, just left my hand resting lightly on his back. "I don't think I can go home just yet," I admitted. Then he turned toward me, his expression reflected faintly in the bike's mirror. "Then stay." I slid off the motorcycle, legs slightly unsteady. Not from the ride, but from everything I hadn't yet processed. He stepped down too, pulling off his helmet and pushing a hand through his hair. "You can crash here," he said after a pause. "No pressure. The guest room's ready. I don't like the idea of you heading back there tonight." I looked at him under the porch light, his face shaded and soft. There was no demand in his voice. Only a quiet hope and care. Okay, I whispered. His shoulders eased, and a small smile touched his lips.
Come on.
I'll grab you something warm. It's cold tonight. We stepped into the house quietly. The living room still held the faint remnants of the party, glasses, plates, traces of music that had long stopped playing. I slipped off my shoes and followed him down the hall, past framed photos I hadn't seen in years. He handed me a hoodie, well-worn, clearly loved. I slipped it over my dress, the fabric still holding his warmth. It smelled like him, that clean, woodsy scent I'd noticed earlier. Something between cologne and comfort. We found ourselves in the kitchen, each with a mug of tea in hand, sitting at the counter like it was just another Tuesday. He told stories about lectures, coworkers, weekend plans I'd missed. I listened, not because I needed a distraction, but because I wanted every detail. Because I hadn't realized how much I'd missed his voice. By the time midnight crept past, we were still talking, now sprawled across opposite ends of the couch. Mugs long emptied, legs folded beneath us. I'm really glad you stayed, he said, voice hushed. Me too, I murmured.
There was a shift then.
Not loud or abrupt, just a change in the air. A quiet pivot, like something delicate had taken root between us. And sitting there, cocooned in his sweatshirt, wrapped in the hush of a house that felt more like sanctuary than any place I'd known lately.
I didn't want the night to end.
The house had gone still, the kind of calm that only happens when the world outside has finally fallen asleep. I probably should have gone to the guest room, but when Daniel stood up and said, almost like a whisper, "Want to hang out in my room for a bit?" I didn't hesitate. I just nodded, like it was the most natural thing in the world. We moved down the hallway together, our footsteps quiet on the wooden floor. He opened the door and gestured for me to go in first. I paused, surprised. The room was simpler than I expected. Clean, but lived in. Posters faded with time, a desk scattered with pens and half-filled notebooks, stacks of books leaning like old friends. It smelled like cedar and him. He pushed open a window, letting the breeze roll in. It was crisp and smelled faintly of the lake and early spring. From a drawer, he pulled out something small and held it between his fingers. You cool with this? He asked casually. I smirked. Since when did you start asking? He laughed under his breath, rolled it expertly, and lit it. We stood by the open window, shoulder to shoulder, watching the night press in close. He passed it to me without a word. I took it. It wasn't about the smoke. It was about sharing the quiet, the weightless moment, the nearness. I breathed in, let it out slowly, like letting go of the parts of the day I didn't want to carry anymore. Outside, the world had stilled. Just the two of us, framed by stars and shadows, breathing the same air. This doesn't feel real, I whispered. Daniel turned, his gaze searching. What doesn't? All of it, I said. This night, this feeling, like I remember who I am again, like I'm actually here. He didn't answer immediately, just reached out, brushed a stray piece of hair from my face. His touch lingered. You don't have to vanish, he said gently. Not anymore. My chest tightened. I see you, he added, softer still. I always have. The words settled around me, warm and solid. I looked at him, really looked, and saw not a boy playing grown-up but someone who meant what he said. No game. No guessing. We passed the ember back and forth, sitting closer each time, until our shoulders touched, then stayed touching. There was tension, but not the kind that rushed or demanded. It was tender, patient, like a story still unfolding. He said something, I forget what, but I remember the sound of his laughter, low and close, and how it made my chest ache with something fierce and familiar. And again, I found myself thinking I didn't want to leave. Not that night. Maybe not ever. We stayed by the window, even after the ember faded. Smoke drifted out into the dark, and we said nothing. But the quiet was full, alive with meaning. I felt his presence beside me, solid and safe. The kind of closeness that didn't need to be explained. He finally turned to face me. His expression was open, unreadable, waiting. Like he was standing at the edge of something too. I shifted. My knee brushed his. A touch so slight, it could have meant nothing. But it didn't. The air between us sparked like a wire just starting to hum. "You really see me?" I asked, my voice barely louder than the breeze between us. Daniel didn't look away. I always have. His words landed somewhere deep, beyond reason, beneath all the layers I'd tried to hide. And before I could second-guess the instinct, I reached up and let my fingers trace the edge of his jaw. The contact was gentle, almost hesitant, and my breath caught in my chest. He leaned into the touch, eyes fluttering closed like he was trying to hold on to the feeling. Then, slowly, naturally, our foreheads met. My eyes drifted shut. All I could feel was him, steady and warm, grounded in the moment. His hand rose, cradling the side of my face, and I opened my eyes just enough to catch the question that lingered in his. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. I answered with a breath, and the space between us vanished. Our mouths met, tentative at first, soft and unsure. A question wrapped in silence. Then again, firmer.
Slower.
With all the weight of what had gone unsaid for too long. My arms circled his neck as he settled at my hips, pulling me close until I could feel his heartbeat thrumming through me. The way he kissed me wasn't rushed or careless. It was deliberate, emotional, as though we both knew how wrong it should be and how right it suddenly felt. When we finally broke apart, it wasn't with shame. It was with wonder, with breathless recognition. A knowing that whatever boundary had been blurred, we hadn't stumbled over it. We'd stepped across together. I rested my head against his chest, and he held me close, his chin coming to rest gently against my hair. No declarations. No illusions. Just the quiet truth that something meaningful had unfolded between us. And in that moment, I didn't feel invisible anymore. I felt seen. I felt safe. I felt chosen.